Victoria Sterling stepped out of her black Tesla onto the cobblestone driveway of Moonrise Manor. The ancestral home she hadn't seen in 5 years. The September wind carried the scent of autumn leaves and distant memories she couldn't quite grasp. At 28, she commanded boardrooms and controlled a tech empire worth billions. But standing before this Victorian mansion, she felt like a lost child. Miss Sterling, the real estate agent, is waiting inside. Rebecca Morgan, her assistant, reminded her gently. Rebecca had been more than an employee for the past 3 years. She was the closest thing Victoria had to family now. Victoria nodded, pushing her long auburn hair behind her ear. The gesture felt familiar, though she couldn't remember why. Everything about this place whispered secrets her mind refused to unlock. Echoes of the past inside the manor. Dust. Particles danced in shafts of golden sunlight streaming through tall windows. Dust. Victoria's heels clicked against hardwood floors that seemed to echo with phantom footsteps. The real estate agent, a chatty woman named Mrs. Henderson, guided them through rooms filled with covered furniture and faded photographs. Your Aunt Catherine maintained the property beautifully before she moved to Paris, Mrs. Henderson explained. Though I must say, it's a shame to sell such a historic family home. Victoria paused before a grand staircase, her hand instinctively reaching for the polished banister. A flash of memory struck, her running up these stairs, laughing, being chased by someone whose face remained frustratingly blurred. Miss Sterling, are you all right? Rebecca asked, noticing her employer's sudden stillness. I'm fine, Victoria. Lead, though her heart raced inexplicably. The accident 5 years ago had stolen chunks of her memory, particularly her late teens and early 20s. Dr. Fletcher had called it selective amnesia, caused by emotional trauma combined with her head injury. She'd built her new life around the fragments that remained. Never looking back, the café encounter after the house tour, Victoria needed air. She walked alone through the small downtown area, surprised by how little had changed. The same brick. Buildings lined Main Street, and the old clock tower still chimed every hour. She found herself drawn to a small café called the Daily Grind. The bell above the door chimed as she entered. The warm smell of coffee and fresh pastries enveloped her, triggering another wave of déjà vu. She ordered a caramel latte and found a corner table by the window. Victoria Sterling. The deep voice behind her made her freeze. She turned slowly, and her breath caught in her throat. A tall man with dark brown hair and piercing blue eyes stood there, holding his own coffee cup. He was handsome in a way that seemed both familiar and foreign, strong jawline, kind eyes that held a hint of sadness, and a smile that didn't quite reach those eyes. I'm sorry, do we know each other? Victoria asked. Though something in her chest tightened with recognition she couldn't explain, the man's expression shifted, pain flickering across his features. Nathan Cross. We used to be... double quotes. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully, friends. Before you left town... Fragments surfaced. Nathan sat down across from her without invitation, and strangely, Victoria didn't mind. There was something about his presence that felt right, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. I heard you were back to sell the manor, he said, stirring his black coffee absently. How are you, Victoria? Really? The question held weight she couldn't understand. I'm fine. Business is good. Life is good. She studied his face, searching for clues. I'm sorry, but my memory of that time is ... incomplete. I had an accident. Ethan's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. I know about the accident. I was there. The words hit her like a physical blow. Her coffee cup rattled against its saucer as her hands trembled. You were there? At the hospital, he clarified quickly, after you were in a coma for weeks. Midges. Flashed through her mind sterile white rooms, beeping machines, faces hovering over her, and through it all, a voice calling her name, pleading with her to wake up. A voice that sounded remarkably like the one speaking to her now. The journal I should go, Victoria said abruptly, standing. The cafe suddenly felt too small, too charged with electricity she didn't understand. Nathan stood too, reaching into his jacket pocket. Wait, I've been carrying this for 5 years, hoping, ... Double quotes, he pulled out a small, leather-bound journal. You left it at my apartment the night before your accident. I thought someday you might want it back. Victoria stared at the journal as if it were a dangerous animal. Her handwriting covered the worn leather cover, V and N forever. She took it with shaking hands. I don't remember writing this, she whispered. Maybe it's time you did, Nathan said softly. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and she felt a jolt of electricity at the contact. Victoria, we need to talk. Really talk. There are things about your accident, about what happened before, that you need to know. Revelations begin that evening, alone in her hotel room. Victoria opened the journal with trembling fingers. The pages revealed a love story she had no memory of living. Her own handwriting described stolen kisses, long walks by the lake, and plans for a future with Nathan Cross. April 15th, Nathan proposed today by the old oak tree where we first kissed. I said yes, of course. How could I not? He's been my whole world since senior year of high school. The ring is perfect simple. And elegant, just like our love. Victoria's hand went to her throat, where she always wore a thin gold chain. She'd never remembered where it came from, but now she pulled it out, finding a small key she'd never paid attention to.
According to the journal.
It was the key to a safety deposit box where she'd kept her engagement ring. The entries continued. Painting a picture of a young woman desperately in love, planning a wedding, dreaming of children. The final entry was dated just days before her accident. Something is wrong. Aunt Catherine has been acting strange, making comments about Nathan not being suitable for our family. She keeps insisting I should focus on my inheritance instead of marriage. Sometimes I feel like she's hiding something about Father's will. Nathan says, I'm imagining things, but I can't shake this feeling that she doesn't want us together. The phone call. Victoria's hands shook as she reached for her phone. She found Nathan's number. Somehow she'd remembered it without trying and dialed Victoria. His voice was hopeful. The journal, she whispered. Nathan, were we engaged? A long pause. Yes, you were wearing your ring the night of the accident. When you woke up, it was gone. Catherine said the hospital must have lost it. What happened to us? What happened that night? You called me crying? You'd found something in your father's study about Catherine and the will? You were upset, said. You needed to see me right away. You were driving to my apartment when ... Double quotes, his voice broke slightly. When the truck ran the red light, Victoria closed her eyes, trying to summon the memory. Fragments came, rain on the windshield, bright headlights, the sound of screeching brakes, and fear. Not just fear of dying, but fear of losing something precious. Why don't I remember you? She asked, tears streaming down her face. The doctor said trauma can cause selective amnesia. But Victoria, I think there might be more to it than that. Your aunt was very involved in your treatment decisions while you were unconscious. She chose your doctors, your therapists, even controlled who could visit you. The growing suspicion, the pieces began forming a disturbing picture. Catherine Sterling had always been controlling, but Victoria had attributed it to grief over losing her brother Victoria's father in a car accident when Victoria was 16. Catherine had become her guardian, managing the family fortune until Victoria came of age. Okay, Nathan, meet me tomorrow morning at the manor. I need to go through Father's study. Are you sure? If Catherine finds out she's in Paris. And besides, it's still my house for another week. After hanging up, Victoria stared at her reflection in the hotel mirror. For 5 years, she'd built a life as a tech entrepreneur, channeling her inheritance into a company that now employed thousands. She'd been proud of her independence, her success built without family connections. But now she wondered if that life had been built on lies. The study. The next morning, Nathan met her at the manor. Seeing him in daylight, Victoria noticed details that felt achingly familiar, the way he ran his hand through his hair when nervous, the small scar on his chin, the way he looked at her like she was something precious and fragile. They made their way to her father's study, a wood-paneled room that had been locked since his death 12 years ago. Victoria used a key from her father's keyring, surprised when it still worked. The room was exactly as her father had left it. Books lined the walls, and his massive oak desk sat beneath a portrait of Victoria's mother, who had died when Victoria was young. Nathan helped her search through filing cabinets while she tackled the desk drawers. "Victoria, look at this." Nathan held up a manila folder labeled Catherine, Private Investigator Report. Inside were photographs, financial documents, and a report dated just months before her father's death. The findings were shocking. Catherine had been embezzling from the family business for years, using her position as bookkeeper to hide her. "Theft, he knew," Victoria whispered, reading her father's handwritten notes. "He was planning to have her arrested." The final revelation: at the bottom of the file was a copy of her father's will, not the version Catherine had shown her, but the original. According to this document, Victoria was to inherit everything immediately upon her father's death, with Catherine receiving only a small stipend. The will, Victoria remembered, gave Catherine control until Victoria turned 25. She switched the wills, Nathan realized. When you started asking questions, when you got too close to the truth, she found a way to make me forget. Victoria felt sick. The accident wasn't enough. She needed me to have amnesia, so I wouldn't remember what I'd discovered. They found more evidence receipts for payments to Dr. Fletcher, Victoria's neurologist, and correspondence between Catherine and a private medical facility specializing in experimental memory treatment. The picture became clear. Catherine had paid for additional procedures designed to suppress specific memories while Victoria was in her coma. Love remembered as the truth sank in. Victoria felt something shifting in her mind. Like ice melting, memories began to surface. She remembered Nathan's laugh, the way he used to hold her hand while they walked. She remembered their first kiss under the oak tree behind the manor, and the night he'd proposed with his grandmother's ring. "I remember," she whispered, looking at Nathan with tears in her eyes. "I remember loving you." Nathan crossed the room in 2 strides, taking her face in his hands. "I never stopped loving you. Even when you looked at me like a stranger. Even when the doctors said you might never remember, I couldn't let go." When he kissed her, it was like coming home. 5 years of emptiness, of feeling like something crucial was missing from her life, finally made sense. She had been missing her heart, and Nathan Cross was her heart. But as they held each other in her father's study, surrounded by evidence of betrayal, Victoria knew their reunion was just the beginning. Catherine would return from Paris eventually. When she learned that Victoria's memory was returning, she would fight to protect her secrets. The woman who had stolen 5 years of their lives wouldn't give up without a battle. The afternoon, sun slanted through the study windows, casting long shadows across the scattered documents. Victoria Sterling, tech mogul, and forgotten fiancé. The man she'd been forced to forget, and prepared for the fight of her life. 3 days after, finding her father's hidden files, Victoria Sterling sat in her hotel suite, surrounded by legal documents and medical records. Rebecca had flown in from New York with Victoria's team of lawyers, and the elegant room now resembled a war room. Nathan hadn't left her side, helping piece together the conspiracy that had stolen 5 years of their lives. "Fletcher are substantial," Rebecca noted, adjusting her glasses as she reviewed bank statements. $200,000 transferred over 6 months during your treatment period. Victoria rubbed her temples, fighting off another headache. The returning memories came in waves now, sometimes overwhelming her with their intensity. Remembered her father's funeral, Catherine's tears that now seemed calculated, and the strange insistence that Victoria needed specialized care for her amnesia. "There's something else," Nathan said quietly, holding up a medical file. "I requested your complete hospital records yesterday. Look at this." He showed her a series of treatment authorizations, all signed by Catherine as her legal guardian. Among them were consent forms for experimental memory modification therapy, described as selective memory suppression to prevent trauma-related psychological breakdown. The doctor's office, Dr. James Fletcher's office, occupied the top floor of a sleek medical building downtown. Victoria had insisted on confronting him directly. Despite Nathan's concerns about alerting Catherine to their investigation, "Miss Sterling, what a surprise," Dr. Fletcher said. "Hello," His nervous fidgeting suggested he'd been expecting this visit. He was a thin man in his 50s, with graying hair and the kind of shifty eyes that never held direct contact for long.
Doctor.
"I'd like to discuss my treatment from 5 years ago," Victoria said, settling into the chair across from his desk. Nathan remained standing, his presence clearly making Fletcher uncomfortable. "Of course, though I should mention, your aunt specifically requested that I not discuss certain aspects of your care without her present." "My aunt is no longer my guardian," Victoria replied coolly. "I'm 28 years old and a fully competent adult. I have every right to know what procedures you've performed on me while I was unconscious." Dr. Fletcher's hands trembled slightly as he opened her file. "The memory modification was experimental, yes, but it was medically necessary. Your aunt was concerned that remembering the trauma of your accident might cause permanent psychological damage." "What trauma?" Nathan interjected. "She was hit by a drunk driver. People recover from car accidents without having their memories erased. There were other factors," Fletcher said carefully. "Your aunt indicated that Miss Sterling had discovered something deeply disturbing about her family before the accident, something that had caused her significant emotional distress." The real reason Victoria leaned forward, her green eyes intense. "Doctor, did my aunt pay you to suppress specific memories that had nothing to do with the accident?" Fletcher's silence was answer enough. His medical license hung on the wall behind him, and Victoria wondered how long it would remain there once. The medical board learned what he'd done. The procedure was reversible, he finally admitted. The memory blocks were designed to weaken over time, especially if the patient encountered strong emotional triggers associated with the suppressed memories. "That's why I'm remembering now," Victoria realized. "Being back in this town, seeing Nathan, finding those documents, it's all triggering the return of what you tried to steal from me." Fletcher looked genuinely remorseful. "Miss Sterling, I thought I was helping you. Your aunt was very convincing about the psychological risks. She showed me letters you'd written, expressing suicidal thoughts about family secrets you'd uncovered." "Letters?" Nathan demanded. "I can't show you without proper authorization." "Yeah, but they were. ... Disturbing. Your aunt said you discovered that your father had been having an affair, that the family business was failing, that there were debts that would leave you penniless." Victoria and Nathan exchanged glances. None of that matched what they'd found in her father's study. If anything, the Sterling family fortune had grown substantially over the years. Carefully managed by trustees, Catherine had claimed to represent Catherine's web of lies that evening. Back at the manor, Victoria called her family's longtime attorney, Robert Walsh. He'd been her father's best friend and had always seemed puzzled by some of Catherine's decisions. Regarding the estate. "Victoria, dear, I'm so glad you called." Walsh's warm voice came through the phone. "I've been worried about you for years, but Catherine insisted that contact with people from your past might interfere with your recovery. Mr. Walsh, I need to ask you about Father's will. Catherine showed me a version that gave her guardianship until I turned 25. But I found a different version in Father's study." A long pause. "Victoria, the will I drafted and witnessed gave you immediate inheritance upon your father's death. Catherine was to receive a modest annual allowance, nothing more. When you turned 18, you should have gained full control of the estate. But she said the courts required a guardian because of my condition after the accident."
"Oh, that's not
"True. I opposed the guardianship petition, but Catherine presented medical evidence that you were mentally incompetent due to your amnesia. Dr. Fletcher testified that you couldn't make sound financial decisions in your condition." The conspiracy deepened. Catherine had used Victoria's medically induced amnesia to justify a guardianship that should never have been granted, allowing her to control the family fortune for years beyond what any legitimate will would have permitted. Nathan's sacrifice. As Victoria processed this betrayal, Nathan revealed his own sacrifice. "I tried to fight for you," he said as they sat by the manor's fireplace. "After your accident, I visited every day until Catherine banned me from seeing you. She told the hospital staff I was causing you distress, that seeing me was preventing your recovery." She was protecting her secret, Victoria realized. "If I remembered you, I might remember what I discovered about her. I hired a private investigator, spent my entire savings trying to prove Catherine was lying about your condition. But without access to you or your medical records, I had nothing. Eventually, I gave up and moved away for a while. I couldn't bear being in this town, seeing places that reminded me of us. Victoria took his hand, feeling the calluses on his palms. You came back. 2 years ago, when I heard you'd built Sterling Tech into a billion-dollar company, I was so proud of you, even if you didn't remember me. I took a job at the local investment firm, hoping that someday you might return. You've been waiting for me all this time. Nathan's blue eyes met hers. I never stopped believing you'd come back. To me, even if it took a miracle. The memory flooded that night, alone in her childhood bedroom at the manor. Victoria's suppressed memories returned in a flood. She remembered finding the evidence of Catherine's embezzlement, the confrontation with her aunt, and Catherine's threat that she would do whatever necessary to protect herself. Most importantly, she remembered her last conversation with Nathan before the accident. She'd called him terrified, saying that Catherine had threatened to have him arrested on false charges if Victoria exposed her. She'd been driving to his apartment to warn him, when the drunk driver ran the red light, but now Victoria wondered if that driver had been drunk at all. Catherine had had weeks to plan, knowing that Victoria was getting close to the truth. The accident would solve all her problems. If Victoria died, Catherine would inherit everything as the sole surviving relative. If Victoria survived, but with convenient amnesia, Catherine could maintain control indefinitely. The phone records the next morning brought confirmation of Victoria's suspicions. Her lawyer's investigative team had obtained phone records from the night of the accident. Catherine had made several calls that evening, one to a man named Tony Russo, who had a criminal record including charges for vehicular assault. More damaging were the financial records showing a payment of $50,000 to Russo just days after Victoria's accident. The money had come from an account Catherine controlled as part of the family business. This suggests the accident was deliberate, Rebecca said, reviewing the documents. She arranged for someone to hit your car. Nathan paced the hotel room. Like a caged animal, she tried to kill you. When that didn't work, she had your memories erased to cover her crimes. Victoria felt surprisingly calm despite the magnitude of her aunt's betrayal. She made one mistake. She let me live. Catherine's return their investigation was interrupted by an urgent call from the manor security system. Someone had entered the house using a key. Victoria's blood ran cold. Catherine had returned from Paris earlier than expected. They rushed to the manor, finding Catherine's rental car in the driveway. Inside, they could hear her moving around, apparently searching for something. Victoria signaled for Nathan to wait outside while she confronted her aunt. Catherine Sterling was an elegant woman in her early 50s, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of refined beauty that came from expensive maintenance. She looked up from her father's ransacked study with surprise and something that might have been fear. Victoria, darling, what are you doing here? I thought you were selling? The house sight unseen. I changed my mind, Aunt Catherine. I decided I wanted to understand my family history better. Catherine's eyes flicked to the scattered documents, many of which Victoria had deliberately left visible. I see you've been going through your father's old papers. I hope you haven't found anything too disturbing. Your father had some financial difficulties before his death that I've worked hard to resolve. Is that what you call embezzlement now? Financial difficulties? Catherine's composure cracked slightly. I don't know what you think you've found, but I found the real will, Catherine. I found the evidence of your theft. I found the payments to Dr. Fletcher. Victoria stepped closer to her aunt. Most importantly, I remember. The confession. Catherine's face went white, then hardened into something cold and calculating. You always were too clever for your own good, just like your father. Did you kill him too? Your father's accident was genuine, unfortunately. He lived long enough to expose me. None of this would have been necessary. Catherine moved to the window, looking out at Nathan, who waited by his car. I see you've reunited with your boyfriend. How romantic. He never forgot me, even when you stole my memories. Those memories were poison, Catherine snapped. You were obsessed with that boy, ready to throw away your entire future for some ridiculous romantic fantasy. The Sterling family needed someone with vision, not a lovesick girl who would squander her inheritance on wedding plans. So you decided to play God with my life. Catherine laughed bitterly. I saved your life. That accident was supposed to kill you cleanly, but Rousseau botched the job. When you survived, I saw an opportunity to fix everything. Without your memories of Nathan or your father's investigation, you could become what the family needed, a successful, focused businesswoman. The recording what Catherine didn't know was that Victoria had been recording their conversation on her phone. Every word of her aunt's confession was being captured, including her admission to arranging the accident. You had my fiancé driven away, my memories stolen, and 5 years of my life erased because you thought you knew better than me how to live. Look at what you accomplished, Catherine said desperately. Sterling Tech is worth billions. You're one of the most successful women in the country. Would you have achieved any of that if you'd married Nathan Cross and settled down to have babies? Victoria looked at her aunt with a mixture of pity and disgust. I would have been happy. That's something you'll never understand. The arrest police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Victoria had sent the recording to her lawyers. Before entering the house, along with instructions to contact law enforcement, if she didn't check in within 30 minutes, Catherine heard the sirens too. You can't prove any of this. It's your word against mine. Actually, it's your recorded confession against your recorded confession, Victoria said, holding up her phone. Plus financial records, medical records, and testimony from Dr. Fletcher, who's already agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. As police cars pulled into the driveway, Catherine made one last desperate attempt at manipulation. Victoria, I'm the only family you have left. Are you really going to destroy that for some man who might leave you again? Victoria looked through the window at Nathan, who was talking earnestly with the police officers, his face creased with worry for her safety. He's not just some man. He's the love of my life, and you stole 5 years we can never get back. I gave you a fortune. Stole my heart. Justice and Healing A's police officers led Catherine away in handcuffs. Victoria felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief, anger, sadness for the relationship they might have had if Catherine had been honest. And underneath it all, an overwhelming sense of freedom. Nathan held her as they watched the police cars disappear down the tree-lined drive. It's over, he murmured into her hair. No, Victoria said, pulling back to look into his eyes. It's just beginning. The setting sun painted the manor's windows gold, and for the first time in 5 years, Victoria Sterling felt complete. Memories were returning daily, filling in the gaps that Catherine's conspiracy had created. She remembered not just her love for Nathan, but her dreams for their future together, dreams that had been interrupted but not destroyed. But even as justice moved forward, Victoria knew the hardest work lay ahead. She had to rebuild not just her relationship with Nathan, but her understanding of herself. The woman who had built Sterling Tech was strong and independent, but she was also missing crucial pieces of her identity. Could she integrate the ambitious CEO with the young woman who had dreamed of marriage and children? Could she trust love again after having it stolen from her so completely? As they walked hand in hand toward Nathan's car, ready to begin the next chapter of their story, Victoria realized that healing would require courage different from what she'd used to build her business empire. It would require the courage to be vulnerable, to trust not just Nathan but herself, and to believe that love could indeed conquer the darkest betrayals. The manor stood behind them, holding its secrets in the gathering twilight, while ahead lay the promise of a future they would write together. The courtroom 6 months after Catherine's arrest, Victoria Sterling sat in the federal courthouse, watching her aunt face the consequences of 5 years of manipulation and fraud. The courtroom was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, medical professionals eager to see how this unprecedented case of medically induced amnesia would be resolved. Catherine had aged dramatically during her months in custody. Her once perfect appearance had deteriorated, and the confident woman who had controlled Victoria's life now seemed fragile and desperate. She kept glancing at Victoria, perhaps hoping for some sign of forgiveness that never came. Dr. Fletcher had already pleaded guilty to medical malpractice and fraud, receiving a 5-year sentence in exchange for his testimony. Tony Russo, the man who had caused Victoria's accident, had been found dead in prison before he could testify. but the financial evidence linking him to Catherine was overwhelming. Your Honor, the prosecutor said during her closing arguments. Catherine Sterling didn't just steal money from her family's business. She stole 5 years of her niece's life, erased her memories, and separated her from the man she loved. This wasn't just fraud, it was psychological torture. Nathan squeezed Victoria's hand as they listened to the verdict. Guilty on all counts: conspiracy, fraud, attempted murder, and medical battery. Catherine would spend the next 25 years in prison, effectively the rest of her productive life. As the bailiff led Catherine away, she turned one last time to Victoria. "I hope you don't regret choosing love over success," she said bitterly. Victoria stood, her voice carrying clearly. "Across the courtroom, I chose both." That's something you never understood. Rebuilding Sterling Tech. The scandal had initially threatened Sterling Tech's reputation, but Victoria's transparent handling of the situation had actually strengthened the company. She'd held a press conference explaining the circumstances, turning her victimization into a powerful story of resilience and recovery that resonated with investors and employees alike. "Our founder's journey from memory loss to recovery mirrors our company's mission," Rebecca had written in the press release. "We believe in the power of innovation to overcome seemingly impossible challenges." The company's stock price had reached an all-time high, and Victoria found herself busier than ever. But now Nathan was part of her world in New York, having relocated to take a position with a prestigious investment firm that handled Sterling Tech's portfolio. The penthouse, Victoria's Manhattan penthouse, had been her sanctuary for 3 years, a minimalist space that reflected her focused, uncluttered approach to business. Now it felt warmer with Nathan's presence. His books mixed with her technical manuals on the shelves, and his guitar sat in the corner where her exercise bike used to be. "I've been thinking about the manor," Victoria said one evening, as they watched the sunset over Central Park. She was curled against Nathan's side on the sofa, wearing one of his old college sweatshirts over her silk pajamas. "What about it? I want to turn it into something meaningful, not sell it to developers who will tear it down for condominiums." She looked up at him. "What would you think about making it a retreat center for people recovering from traumatic brain injuries, where they can relearn who they are in a peaceful setting?" Nathan smiled, the expression reaching his eyes in a way that still made her heart skip. "I think your father would be proud, and I think it's perfect for us to work on together." "Us? Well, I do have some experience with recovery programs. My firm has been looking for meaningful, charitable projects to support." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "That is, if you want me involved in your long-term plans." Victoria felt something flutter in her chest. They'd been living together for 3 months, but they'd both been careful not to rush into decisions about their future. The trauma of their separation had made them both cautious about making promises they might not be able to keep. The memory box while cleaning out the manor's attic. Victoria had found a wooden box hidden behind old Christmas decorations. Inside were mementos from her relationship with Nathan that Catherine hadn't managed to find and destroy, ticket stubs from movies, dried flowers from their first date, and photographs of them together. One photo in particular had moved her to tears. It showed Nathan kneeling by the oak tree behind the manor, sliding an engagement ring onto her finger, while she laughed with pure joy. She looked so young in the picture, so certain that love could conquer anything. "I was so naive," she'd told Nathan when she showed him the box. "No," he'd replied, studying the photograph. "You were right. Love did conquer everything. It just took longer than we expected." The proposal reduction, a warm Saturday in early autumn, Nathan suggested they drive up to the manor to check on the renovation progress. The old house was being transformed into the Sterling Recovery Center, with construction crews working to modernize the facilities while preserving its steric character. They walked through rooms that would soon house therapy sessions and support groups, but Nathan seemed distracted, checking his phone repeatedly and glancing at his watch. "Are we expecting someone?" Victoria asked, as they made their way to the back garden. Actually, yes. The oak tree where Nathan had originally proposed had been carefully preserved during the renovation. Now Victoria saw that someone had strung lights through its branches and set up a small table underneath with champagne and roses. Her breath caught as Nathan dropped to one knee. pulling out a ring box that looked exactly like the one in the photograph. "Victoria Sterling," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "5 years ago, I asked you to marry me under this tree." You said yes, but we never got the chance to follow through on that promise. Victoria's eyes filled with tears as memories flooded back, not just of the original proposal, but of all the dreams they'd shared for their future together. "I know we're different people now," Nathan continued. "You've built an empire, survived betrayal, and fought too. Reclaim your own identity. I've learned what it means to lose everything that matters, and somehow find the strength to keep going. We're not the same young couple who fell in love in this garden." He opened the ring box, revealing not her original engagement ring, but a new one, a stunning sapphire surrounded by diamonds that caught the afternoon light like captured starfire. "But I love who you are now, even more than I loved who you were then. Will you marry me, Victoria? Will you let us build something new together while honoring what we never got to finish?" Victoria looked down at the man she'd loved across time and trauma, memory loss, and recovery. The ring was perfect, not trying to recreate the past, but acknowledging who they'd become. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Nathan Cross, I'll marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Victoria felt a completeness she'd been searching for without realizing it. This wasn't just about reclaiming a lost love, it was about choosing to build something new with full knowledge of what it had cost them both. The wedding 3 months later, Victoria Sterling and Nathan Cross were married in the garden of the Sterling Recovery Center. The guest list was small but meaningful. Rebecca, who had become Victoria's closest friend. Dr. Walsh, the family lawyer who had helped expose Catherine's crimes. Dr. Fletcher's replacement, who had been instrumental in Victoria's complete recovery. And several couples who had benefited from the center's programs. Victoria wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit her perfectly, while Nathan wore a simple black suit with a tie that matched her sapphire engagement ring. Instead of a traditional ceremony, they had written their own vows that acknowledged both their past and their future. "I promise to love you not just for who you were or who you might become," Victoria said, her voice carrying clearly in the autumn air, "but for who you are in this moment, standing here with me after everything we've survived." Nathan's vows brought tears to every eye present. "I promise to protect your memories, all of them, the good ones we're creating, and the difficult ones that made us stronger. I promise to build a future with you that honors our past without being limited by it." When they kissed, sealing their marriage, Victoria felt the last pieces of her fractured life click into place. She was still the CEO of Sterling Tech, still the woman who had built $1 billion empire. She was also Nathan's wife and the keeper of recovered dreams. The honeymoon. They honeymooned in Tuscany, staying in a villa that overlooked rolling vineyards and ancient olive groves. For 2 weeks, Victoria turned off her phone and let Rebecca handle the day-to-day operations of Sterling Tech while she focused entirely on being newlywed. "Do you ever regret it?" Nathan asked one evening as they sat on their balcony, sharing a bottle of local wine as the sun set over the Italian countryside. "Regret what? Not having the life Catherine thought you should have?" "No distractions. Just pure focus on building your empire." Victoria considered the question seriously. Her success with Sterling Tech had given her financial independence, professional respect, and the satisfaction of building something meaningful. But it had also been driven partly by the emotional void left by her stolen memories. "I think I built the company partly because I felt like something was missing," she admitted. "I was trying to fill a hole I didn't understand, now that I remember. What was taken from me, success feels different. Better." "How so?" "Before achieving something felt like proof that I was complete, that I didn't need anything else. Now it feels like something I'm sharing with you, something we're building together, even when you're not directly involved." Nathan reached for her hand, running his thumb over her wedding ring. "Sterling Tech is still yours, Victoria. I never want you to feel like marriage means giving up your independence. I know. Independence feels different when it's chosen rather than imposed." She leaned against his shoulder. "Catherine thought love would make me weak. She was wrong. Loving you makes me braver. The future back in New York." Victoria threw herself into expanding Sterling Tech's charitable initiatives while Nathan developed investment strategies that supported companies with strong social missions. They worked well together, complementing each other's strengths without competing. The Sterling Recovery Center officially opened on the first anniversary of Catherine's sentencing. Victoria spoke at the dedication ceremony, sharing her story. With other survivors of traumatic brain injury and their families, memory isn't just about the past, she told the audience. It's about understanding who we are, so we can choose who we want to become. This center exists to help people reclaim not just their memories, but their power to shape their own futures. In the audience, Nathan watched his wife with pride and amazement. She'd taken the worst betrayal imaginable and transformed it into a force for healing others. The young woman who had trusted to isolate had become a leader who could inspire hope in the darkest circumstances. After the ceremony, they walked through the manor's renovated rooms, now filled with state-of-the-art medical equipment and comfortable spaces for therapy sessions. Victoria's father's study had been converted into a library where patients could read and reflect during their recovery. He would have liked this, Victoria said, running her fingers along the spines of books that now included memoirs of other survivors, alongside medical texts and classic literature. Your father, both of them actually. My father and the father I hope our children will have someday. Nathan stopped walking, turning to face her with surprise and delight. Are you saying ... double quotes, I'm saying I want it all, Nathan? The career, the marriage, the family we dreamed about under that oak tree? Catherine was wrong. I don't have to choose between love and success. I can have both. The circle complete 2 years later. Victoria stood in the nursery of their Manhattan apartment, holding their 6-month-old daughter, Emily Sterling Cross. The baby had Nathan's blue eyes and Victoria's determined chin, and she seemed to study the world with the same intensity her mother brought to board meetings. She's going to be brilliant, Nathan said, joining them by the window that overlooked Central Park. She's going to be loved, Victoria replied. That's more important. As they watched their daughter sleep, Victoria reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Catherine's betrayal had stolen 5 years of their lives, but it had also taught them the true value of what they'd found together. Their love had survived separation, memory loss, and deliberate sabotage because it was built on something deeper than convenience or passion. It was built on genuine recognition of each other's souls. The evening light painted the nursery in shades of gold and amber, and Victoria felt a peace she'd never experienced before. Her memories returned. She was Victoria Sterling Cross, CEO, wife, mother, survivor. All of these identities belonged to her, and none of them diminished the others. In her arms, Emily stirred and opened her eyes. Looking up at her parents with the trust that only babies possess, Victoria made a silent promise to her daughter that she would never have to choose between love and ambition, that she would grow up knowing that strength and vulnerability could coexist, and that the most important memories were the ones we're creating together, one day at a time. The phone rang softly from the living room, probably Rebecca with updates from Sterling Tech, or Dr. Martinez from the Recovery Center with news about their latest patient success. Victoria glanced toward the sound, then back at her family. The calls could wait. Some moments were too precious to interrupt, too perfect to rush past in pursuit of the next achievement. The millionaire had tried to forget, but love had brought her home, not just to Nathan, but to herself. As night fell over the city, Victoria Sterling Cross held her husband and daughter close, finally understanding that the greatest fortune she'd ever accumulated wasn't measured in dollars or stock prices. It was measured in moments like this. In love recovered and dreams fulfilled. In the quiet certainty that some things are worth fighting for, no matter how long it takes to win them back.